In 1983, I was 21 years old and I needed a job. And I didn't care what kind of job it was, but I knew that a sales job was probably the only thing I was qualified for because I figured salesmen didn't need any kind of education. And so I got a job selling manufactured homes and modular homes in St. Charles. And I was new to the area. I had moved here to St. Louis from Pittsburgh and didn't know anybody. I was starting with a clean slate. I started working there and they tried to teach me how to sell whatever. And it was like the real estate experience. You got a manager in the office and he's selling to, and there's other salespeople and they're all competing with each other and not necessarily even like each other. And customers would come to the sales center and they would park in the parking lot. And then all of the displays are lined up against the highway because you're trying to draw people in. And we had some really nice displays, big double wides and modulars and 2-story modulars and all this. And they're all decorated and landscaped and so on. And so people would come and they would want to go through the displays. And so they would come to the lot, they'd park, and they'd immediately beeline it for the first house. And as a salesman, we took turns, right? Now, the older veterans, they were sneaky. So you had to sit at, they called it the up desk because you're up next. So you would sit at this desk by the window in the front door. And then when somebody would come in, then you had to get up and go out there to talk to them like a car lot. Okay. And generally speaking, by the time you got out of your chair and got your coat on and whatever you needed to paperwork or whatever, sale price list or whatever, and you headed out the door to meet them, they were already gone. They were hoofing it because they didn't want to talk to a sales. And the other salespeople were diabolical in that it being new, they would take advantage, right? And so I'd be on my way out to greet somebody getting out of their car and they'd be like looking past me going like this. And I turn around and then one of the veteran salesmen's like waving to him. And then I would think, oh, they already know him. And I turn around and come back. It happened 3 or 4 or 5 times. And I realized they didn't know who they were. They were stealing my up. They were taking my opportunity. And so in sales, the people that you work with on a daily basis are many times, they're not interested in you being successful. They don't want you to be successful. And so you may have had that experience when you first became an agent and you're in the office and you're talking to people and you're like, I have a question and nobody wants to help you. They don't have time for you. A broker doesn't have time for you. Nobody's answering their phone. And so you just have to figure it out on your own. And I started to figure things out and they're trying to teach me, you need to do this and do that and take control of your customer and don't let them walk away. You need to control the whole conversation and make your presentation about all the features and benefits of the house and what they're looking at. And then try to find out, are they qualified, right? And then you do your presentation and then you close. Have you ever seen the movie Glengarry, Glen Ross? Stephen Baldwin and Jack Lemmon and Al Pacino and Ed Harris, Kevin Spacey. It's just packed full of these stars, but from 30 years ago. Okay. And it is a real estate brokerage and it is all played out basically in the training room. And it is, if you can stomach watching a movie that's old, it is exactly what being a salesman was like. Okay. And so basically that's the environment that I'm in. And I have to sell homes like that. And so I was not having a lot of success. I was pretty good, but after a while, I hit my groove a little bit. I was doing a couple, 3 deals a month and I'm making a living and trying to do things the way they taught me to do them. But it never felt right and I never felt comfortable. And I always felt like I was just another car salesman. That's what it felt like. And so I knew all those systems and I took all that training and I understood what they were trying to do. And basically what they want to do is they want to take control of the customer and they want to handle their objections one by one and back them into a corner until they have no objections left and then they have no choice but to sign a contract. Okay. And similarly, if you go to Macy's, I don't know where you shop, but is Macy's even around anymore? I don't even know that they're here. You go to Penny's or whatever and you're looking at clothes and you're walking through the clothing section and you're just touching stuff. And what's the first thing that happens? Salesman comes up. What does she say?
Can I help you?
And what do you say?
No, I'm fine. I'm just looking.
Right. Because that is just the first step to them trying to get you to buy something you don't want. And because people don't like confrontations and they don't like being mean to other people for the most part, and they don't like the feeling of somebody trying to control them or to push them into doing something they don't want to do, our first reaction has been ingrained in us as a society. As all people, we've been trained that we have an adversarial relationship with customers, okay? And so your instinct, which your mom taught you or your dad taught you or you observed other people doing as you were growing up, is when the salesman comes around, you say, I'm just looking. I'm not interested. I'm just wasting time right now. And so when you go to buy a car, salesman immediately is on you. He's coming at you on the parking lot and he comes up to you and says, sticks his hand out, maybe his card, and says, what kind of car are you looking for today? And your reaction is, I'm just looking. I just wanted to see what the new cars look like. And so you are having this battle, right? Now you have to deal with them at some point because you really want to buy a car or you really want to buy a blouse or whatever. And so at some point you're like, hey, I know I told you I wasn't interested before. This car over here interests me. There's no price on it. And so you start the conversation and then you have this battle and then he's trying to get you to come in and sit down and get all your information, all that stuff, right? We've all been through it. So I am trying to make a living selling these modular homes, manufactured homes, and none of this feels right to me as a salesman. It doesn't fit me. And I had lived in St. Louis just a very short time, and I left Pennsylvania to seek my fortune and just get away from everything in Pennsylvania. And I really wanted to be successful at something. That was my goal. I want to be very successful and make a lot of money and pave my way, my own way. And I thought to myself, if I can be the best at anything, then I'm going to be successful. I'm going to make money. And I thought, this is as good an opportunity as any other to be successful. So I'm just going to try to make a science out of this. And so one day, as a salesman at this company, and most of the companies like that, salespeople have a lot of downtime because people are not streaming through the door to buy these things, right? And so we had a responsibility to make sure that the displays were straightened up and that things were clean. And so I had a 5-gallon plastic bucket and I had cleaning supplies in it and rags and paper towels and Windex and so on. And when it was dead on the lot, I would take that bucket and I would go out and I'd go through the displays and I would clean the kids, their fingerprints off the windows and so on and so forth and straighten things up because things get bumped around and dusty and so on. And one day I'm out there doing that and I hear a car pull up and the car's door's shut. And I know that these folks are going to the first display. And so I thought, I was here first. It's a Saturday morning. I was here first. So it's really my up. And I didn't know if the other salesmen had showed up yet or not. Saturday morning, a lot of those guys were out drinking Friday night or whatever. So you never knew when they were going to show up. So I thought, these people, they're going to get to the house I'm in. So I'm not going to drop everything. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because it's got to get done. And they probably don't want to buy anything anyway. So I'm just going to stay here and let them come to the next house. And so they did. They went to the next house and then they get to my house and they walk in and I just said, hey, how you doing? And they said, oh, fine. And I continued cleaning. And so they are walking through and they're talking to each other and they're not really paying any attention to me at all. And then they come back through and they say, do you know anything about these houses? And I said, yeah, I know a little bit. And they said, we got some questions. I said, okay, fire away. So they started asking questions and it just progressed. And then I take them back to the office and I saw them a house. And I thought, why did that work? What changed? What was different? And I thought, they must have thought that I wasn't a salesperson. I don't know what they thought I was, but they were disarmed, right? Their guard was down and they weren't threatened by me. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try that again. And so when it was my turn, I would grab the 5-gallon bucket and I would go out and I would start straightening up houses. And then they would come in and they'd go through the house and then they'd come to my house and they would say, hello. They were polite. Hey, how's it going? I just start cleaning. And eventually they say, do you have anything about these houses? And so over a period of time experimenting with this, my sales double and I start to become a thing, right? Because I am killing it. And none of the other salespeople can figure out what I'm doing or what's different. And I'm not telling them, right? And so I started dressing down. I started wearing jeans every day instead of khakis or whatever. And I would wear a decent shirt or a polo or whatever, but I didn't look like the other salesman. The other salesman always had a tie on, right? And the boss always wanted me to wear a tie. So I would wear my tie and then I would take it off and I would put it in the bottom of the bucket when I would go out to do my thing, right? And dressing down and more normal made it even better, right? Because then they really didn't believe I was a salesman. And so over time, I just came to realize that being the exact opposite of a salesperson is really my ticket to success. And I need to refine that and I need to figure out how it works and why it works. And so I became a student of human nature and I really studied how people reacted through the process. And I tried to look at the process through their eyes. Okay. So how does it make them feel? What are they experiencing? Why would they want to do business with someone like me? And what are they feeling on their end? And really, the true test is when you get all the way to the end of the process and they are thanking you and shaking your hand and the wife wants a hug or whatever. You've done a good job at that point. So you're getting that feedback, or I was getting that feedback. And then I thought, that's really not the end of the process. The end of the process is getting a referral. That's where the process starts over again. So in that industry, the owner of the company would do all of the advertising. His job was to get people to come on the lot. Our job was to take them as they came and do something with them. And so what I was experiencing was someone would buy a home and they would take delivery of it and they would move in and everything would be wonderful. And then someone would come to the lot and a salesman will go out there and say, how you doing or whatever, and attack them. And they'd say, oh no, we're here to see Cort. Is he around? And then they would come in and they'd say, hey, so-and-so told me to come talk to you. And so I thought, no, that is the end of it. So your goal as a salesperson is not to make the paycheck. Your goal as a salesperson is to get the referral. And if that is the end of the process, is them giving you the next piece of business, what does the sale process actually have to look like in order to make that happen every single time without fail? Okay. And so consequently, I had to come up with a way to document it. And at some point, I owned my own company and I decided I'm going to try to train people how to do it this way.